Thank you. I have the honor to keep you alive in the afternoon after such a marvelous lunch. So maybe we could start by some exercise. You know that Lisbon is a town with many hills, and they have a famous little tramway, yellow tramway. For those of you who don't know it, I suggest you have some visits. And it's a bit like social dialogue. Social dialogue, the slope is very tough, but once you are at the top, the view is superb. And this is what we're trying to discuss this afternoon. I hope that we'll be able to find better examples of social dialogue than some of the things we heard this morning, where we understood that the maximum some companies may expect to have a code of conduct which prevent a child labor or which prevent a forced labor. So we may try to have some more ambitious targets. My name is Philippe Aubin. My union is CFDT from France, but I'm here as a representative of IndustriAll Europe, the Federation of Unions, which was presented by Luc Truand this morning. I'm what is called the IndustriAll coordinator or the IndustriAll expert to the Schneider Electric European Works Council. You may know that IndustriAll has the right, if the WC agreements forecast so, has the right to appoint an expert. So my role is to be a kind of advisor to the member of the European Works Council to try to solve, if any, some discrepancies or some tensions between the unions, and also to be a kind of interpreter of the management of the company to IndustriAll, and from IndustriAll to the management of the company. By the way, I made most of my professional life in the telecom business. I was in charge of deploying telecom networks abroad. And this is how I happened to know Cascais due to a nice project with submarine cable where the landing station was there. And I have been also at the end of my professional career the secretary of Alcatel-Lucent European Works Council. I'm no longer with Alcatel. I've retired from the company and I'm working for my union. So we'll have a quick look on what is Schneider Electric. Then the main topic of this afternoon is to tell you one of the agreements which were shown in Luc Truand's presentation this morning, an agreement which was signed between then European Metal Workers Federation, now IndustriAll, and Schneider Electric management. So it's signed in 2007, so we'll present this agreement. We'll try to see in concrete words how it works. Then we'll try to discuss what is good and what is not so good in this agreement, and to imagine what might be the next steps. Schneider Electric is a French company. The Schneider Group was created in, I think, in the first half of the 19th century, more as a metal works company with blast furnace, a lot of heavy machinery. After a lot of changes in the company history, the main branch remaining in the Schneider control is this specialist in energy. What they manufacture mostly high voltage equipment, low voltage equipment, transformers, inverters, converters, cables and connectors, all what is electric. And now when we discuss electricity networks, you have also to take care of the IT to try to make smart grid in the city, so they have also become an IT company. So their customers are mostly industries, heavy machinery industries, and also infrastructure, some cities or some collectivities ask Schneider Electric to take care of their power network. And of course now with the global warming issue boiling, there are more and more specialists of green technologies. Some indication on the main figures. So the turnover is around 25 billion euros yearly. The net income 2 billion euros, so which make a profit ratio of roughly 12%. 8%. Not so bad. That's a company who is performing relatively well. They were affected, of course, by the 2008-2009 crisis as any company in the world, but they have a rather well-balanced turnover between Asia Pacific, Americas, Europe, and the rest of the world. So when one region doesn't perform that well, they try to compensate on other regions, and that's we could say that's a rather sound company. No company is problemless, but Schneider Electric has a relatively good performance record. They still have many factories, as you may see, and there are 150,000 people, roughly 42,000 in Western Europe, and 50,000 altogether in Europe as a whole. By the way, also it's a French company. The CEO, the chairman and the president of the board and executive manager decided to be based in Hong Kong a few years ago. So it's a French company with a strong multinational flavor. In Europe, to say it quickly, so 50,000 people, more or less. Europe is 1/3 of the company, so we are discussing an agreement for Europe, but we'll see at the end that finally this agreement only covered 1/3 of the company's staff. But Europe is still, due to the strong French flavor, 60% of the shareholders. And by the way, that's the Europe among the three regions, Asia Pacific, Americas, and Europe is the only region where they have a kind of transnational works council, a transnational body to discuss with the staff representative. Schneider was incorporated as a French company until 2014, and last year they decided to change and to take the status of a European company. That's a status which has been made available, made possible by a European directive in 2001, which gives some advantages of transnationality to the companies. For example, the possibility to move the headquarters anywhere within Europe, or the possibility to better access some European subsidies or some European business. It's more an image choice for the company to show that they are no longer such a French company but a European one, although they are truly a worldwide company. So in 2007, then the European Railroads Federation and Schneider signed this agreement on anticipation of changes. What was the reason? Schneider Electric is a company where social dialogue has been relatively efficient, of course, with ups and downs, but they created the European Works Council in 1994, before the first directive. They play with the rules. When they have some rules on staff representation or union representation in the country, usually they don't try to escape it. So if they simply comply with the law, which is, by the way, what you should expect from all companies. And in the first years of this century, people saw more and more that industry was going into big changes. We see that more and more now with the digitization of the industry, with the strong concern also for power consumption, global warming. So a lot of things are changing in the industry. Also, something which are changing is the move from west to east. First from Western Europe to Eastern Europe, and also from Eastern Europe to low-cost countries, mostly China and India. So a lot of changes going, and the idea of the manager, or the idea of the union was better than be obliged to undergo these changes, let's try to anticipate them. So the idea was, let's try to have a higher look at what is happening in the company, and let's try to be prepared to what will happen in the next 5 to 10 years. That was the basic idea of this agreement. The first discussions of the agreement took place in 2005, and the agreement was finally signed in 2007. It also corresponded with in Schneider Electric a program known as Sustainable Development, which took place from 2005 to 2008. So really the main target is to notice and to acknowledge that skills in the companies are changing, that jobs are changing, that people are changing, that employment is changing, that in many cases it may be employment destruction, and that we have to be prepared to that and to try to anticipate in terms of training and also to do the best which can be done in case of trouble. By the way, this is more or less the extension to the European field of what is known in France as the anticipated changes or provisional management of skills and employment, which is in place in some big industries in our country, in my country. So this agreement has three parts. One part on skills and training, one part on social dialogue, and one part on how to anticipate the possible problems, I mean how to anticipate layoffs, and clearly how to anticipate when you close a factory in France, in Spain, in Germany, in Italy, it happened recently and it was rather difficult, or in UK, and you transfer this factory to Poland, to Bulgaria, to Romania, or to Mexico, to Brazil, or to China. So let's see. So we'll see those three pillars of the agreement. First, the anticipation of change. And so the main target of this agreement, as seen here, is to really try to have be one step ahead of what will happen, to improve the anticipation of change by promoting, firstly, an active practice of social dialogue, and to improve individual competency reviews and better practice of anticipation of competencies. So those three pillars. So first pillar is skills and competencies, employment and skills, with three commitments. First, try to understand in advance what will be the required skills some years ahead. We see that is not the implementation has not been very convincing so far, but progress has been made. So, which type of skills will the company need within 3 to 5 years? Will I need cloud specialists? Will I need IO workers? Will I need secretaries? Will I need skill technicians? In which fields? Transformers, IT, cables, connectors. What will be my requirements? And how can we fill this requirement with the staff? And examining how the staff can progress. So conducting individual competence review for each employee of the company, and not only for white collars as is usual. This sounds very basic in some countries, like in Western Europe countries, where normally the management conducts this yearly competence review with companies, but this was not the case all across Europe, and it has been a real progress for some countries which were less advanced in skills management. And so a yearly competence review, and at least every 3 years, trying to identify on top of the competence review which training actions should be implemented. Should I give some training to this guy in English, or should I give some training in soldering, or should I give some training in secretary skills or in program management? This has to be reviewed every 3 years. And of course, from those individual needs, try to develop an active training policy, which is now a lot based on e-learning, on massive online courses. The company has set up some nice e-learning programs available to all employees across Europe. So first plan, skills and training. By the way, what I described you is the purpose of the agreement. So of course this looks very, very nice, super, good, and so on. The reality is sometimes not so bright, but at least this is the intent. Second pillar of the agreement, social dialogue. So it simply says that Schneider will try to have discussion with employee representatives. That's simply what they have to do anyway, but at least they say, we do that on purpose, we are happy to meet the employees' representative, and we don't consider that as a penalty imposed by the law, as we have done this morning. So having regular meetings with employee representatives, both at the European level and at the national level, also trying to give staff representatives information of company strategy, again trying to look ahead, what will be the products or the service we'll sell in 3 to 5 years, and consulting the employees when there are difficult consequences on anticipation of changes. So simply saying, we believe that the dialogue with the employees and the employees' representative is fruitful for the company or will implement it. On third, and this is the toughest part, when we have trouble, when we have a disagreement, won't prevent Schneider to close factories in Europe, especially in France, where it happened a lot. But at least it gives some guarantee that they will try to find solution when they close a factory. And closing factory over the last 2 years has happened in Austria, in Italy, in France, in Spain, in UK, and in Finland. So it's not, it's really something which happens in Belgium as well. Schneider, unfortunately, has closed several shops in Europe. At least the agreement says when we close a shop, we try to find solution either to reindustrialize the region where we have closed the shop, or to find training for the staff, or to propose the staff with other positions in our company in the same country. So these are the 3 pillars of this agreement, and we'll see now how it works in practice. The main player of this anticipation of change agreement is the European Works Council, which was created in 1994. So it was created initially before the first directive, but it was basically working according to the 1996 AWC EU directive. Then when EU reviewed this directive and made the recast directive on EWC in 2009, the well-known 2009/38 directive, Schneider Electric, unlike several other companies which tried to escape, Schneider Electric accepted to negotiate and to update their agreement to include the new provision of this directive, especially the right for consultation. And again, this agreement was reviewed in 2014, last year, after Schneider Electric had become a European company. This European Works Council is composed of 38 members from 22 countries, representing 51,000 people. 20, we have seen that this morning. This AWC is made of unionized staff and non-unionized staff. So you have on the screen the sharing between unionized and non-unionized. It's more or less half-half. Unionized countries, Schneider, are Germany, Italy, Belgium, Sweden, Denmark, France, Czech Republic, while the others are non-unionized. But usually the unionized staff has a better understanding of the political issues of social dialogue, and they try to help the non-unionized staff. We don't feel any difference in the meetings between the unionized and non-unionized representatives, but it's clear that unionized representatives are better used to this type of dialogue. There is a core council of 10 members, and also the Schneider Electric board, so at the management level, has 11 staff representatives, 5 from the French Works Council, 5 from the European Works Council, and one which is on top, the secretary of the European Works Council, which may or may not be French at the moment. He's a French, by the way. This is good news that the staff is representative at the board level. However, it's a kind of fake good news, because the board, which is the board where they have representatives, is not the right board who makes the decision. That's a second level board. The top board with the shareholders of the company has still no staff representative, but there is a second level with a second level board with the company CEO, the company HR director, and 3 top people of the company where they discuss with staff. Some idea on the composition of the Works Council. So there are several geographical zones. On the core council is made of the secretary, which is elected, which is currently French. The deputy secretary, which is elected, who is currently Dutch. The French secretary is unionized. The Dutch secretary is not unionized. And he's made of 7 members of the main zones. And there have been some zones we have had some internal fights to know which country would be the country designated representative to the board, to the core council. And to avoid such problem, we have also decided that there will be 2 temporary members at the core council. This is what you see in the last but one bullet. 2 temporary members in order to be sure that all countries have a chance to be representative at some stage at the core council level. You see, this works relatively well. What is important is to notice that the job of a Works Council delegate, the meetings with management is really the tip of the iceberg. It's the minimum part. The full Works Council meets once a year. The core council itself meets once per quarter, and actually they meet more often. They have several core conferences. On average, they meet almost once per month, either physically or over a phone network. But the role is very permanent. The core council member must be the representative of his region, must consult what happens in the countries in charge, report and try to pass the information and try to solve the issues which are due to the company policy in his region. And every year, the European Works Council review the 2007 Anticipation of Change Agreement. It happens in December, and usually with an industrial representative either from the headquarters in Brussels or myself. And IndustriAll consults all the unions which are involved across Europe, telling them how you think this agreement has been worked last year. We hope to receive answers from unions. We report these unions to management. Management tells us how they feel the agreement was implemented. We try to interchange, and at the end we send formal comments to the company management telling them this is how the agreement went in 2014, for example. This is what we'd like to do in 2015. So this is a follow-up. This follow-up review of the agreement is really something important. So what can we think? What are the results of this agreement in terms of concrete results for staff? Of course, this is a double-edged sword. There is nice things, there are not so nice things. The good things is in terms of staff training, skills management, competency review, definitely there have been progress in many European countries, mostly in Eastern Europe or Southern Europe or Baltic countries. Now they conduct really skills review. This is formally in place for white collars. There is still progress to be made for blue collars. Blue collars don't get in all countries yet this yearly competence reviews. Also, the staff representative bodies are working relatively well. The main problem, it's another story, but the main problem is when you discuss information and consultation is often very formal. I am consulted, I tell the manager, I don't like your project, he tells me, thank you very much. Next please. So consultation, if consultation when the project is already more or less implemented or is totally decided by management has no value. Consultation when the staff representative cannot be held by a technical expert to understand all the figures of the management has also little value. Usually management comes with 200 slides, they tell you, this is the project, give us our advice within 2 weeks. So it's totally undoable. However, formally it works. And also in case of restructuring, it's not perfect. We have currently a case in France where they have decided to offshore the production to Poland without informing the European Works Council, and this is a case of conflict this day. But on average, it doesn't look that bad. We had a difficult case for a closure of a factory in Rieti, Italy, where after a long conflict, after staff involvement, after strikes and meetings, finally management also made some progress into finding solutions, and management and union signed a compromise, which was where IndustriAll was also instrumental. So discussion not always works totally well, but on average we can consider it's good. Now on the dark side, this agreement was mostly made to anticipate, but we finally realized that we don't anticipate a lot. When the factory has to be closed, company management comes and tells, sorry, we have to close the factory. We are very sorry, we try to do our best to minimize the consequences, but we have not had really cases where it was possible to preview what would happen, to preview change of skills for the staff, to preview trainings, to preview possibly offshoring of some activities or inshoring of some activities. So we are, on average, Schneider Electric is relatively reactive to what happens, but it's not enough proactive yet. I know it's difficult in our industry, like in all industries, it's hard to know what will happen next month, so even more what will happen in 5 years. However, the power companies are facing big challenges, for example, for the decarbonization of the economy, for the digitization, and I am really sorry that the company doesn't think ahead enough for the stories. There has been some progress because since 2013, companies have put in place a program of workforce planning. I won't present it in details, but because I'm short of time, it's the next step. They try to make some steps in better understanding what will be the skills needed in future. But this is still starting, while normally it should have started 5 years ago. But it means at least that the problem is understood, even though it's not solved. So on average, we are not unhappy with the agreement. The Schneider is that they are not angels. That's a company which wants to make profit. Sometimes they make profit mostly on the employees, but they also try to play with the group, and when dialogue is possible, to play with dialogue. Next step, what we are trying to do now is, this agreement was good at the beginning. There were progress made, especially in Eastern Europe or Southern Europe. There was alignment and some staff representative rights, skills rights, on what was happening in France. This is in place, and now it's considered as normal business. So this agreement has, on that part, this agreement has been successful, but because it has been successful, it is no longer needed. And when we query every year the national union and how this agreement works, until 2013 we had several answers from various countries. In 2014 we had very few answers. This probably means that this agreement now has played its part, and that something else should be put in place. So that's something that we are trying to discuss both with management and with the unions. How could we revive this agreement to progress even more in terms of anticipation? So there are a few ideas which have been discussed already with the union representative and the staff representative. And also the next step would be to think that Europe is only 1/3 of Schneider staff. So how could we extend this agreement to the other countries? It will be relatively easy in countries where we have a good union representation like Brazil or India. It might be more difficult in China, where there are unions in China, but the unions agreements that are not necessarily independent from the political power. And in the USA, there is no union at all. So how to do in countries with no union? But there is definitely a need on the staff side to go to a worldwide frame agreement. I'm not sure this will is shared by the management. We'll probably have to push them a little bit to go further, but it will be our next fight with them. So you have the doctor, this one, the first speaker presented the worldwide frame agreement. He presented 140. Regarding our field in industry, we have about 100 out of those 140, and you have here a list, which you will find the slide, of companies with just a worldwide agreement in the industrial scope. Tout de même,